In this episode, we make it to South America, Quito, Ecuador to be specific. Quito has some fun distinctions. It is both the capital of and largest city in Ecuador. It is the highest capital city in the world and closest to the equator. By highest, I mean it has a high elevation of 9,350 feet above sea level, or 2,850 meters. So if you want to go to La Mitad del Mundo, go to Quito. Ecuador is located on the northwest coast of South America, and Quito has a population within its city limits of 2 million and 3.2 million in its larger metropolitan area. I could not think of a better person to speak to and learn from about sustainability in Quito. Jose Luis Barros is the immediate past director of urban development for the city and now is a highly sought after sustainability consultant. Jose is an architect by training, having studied in Ecuador and then earning his master's of architecture and sustainable design in London. As I mentioned, you were the director of urban development for the city of Quito for several years. What did that job entail, and what were your team's major achievements during your time there?
Yeah, well, it's funny because actually the main duty I had during my time as director was to develop urban legislation for public space and urbanistic development. However, as you can imagine, due to the shortage of resources and the speed of the administration, you always take some more issues to solve. So I've been immersed in things like urban planning, finance of urban infrastructure. So many things actually. I had a great teacher, which was my boss. He was an excellent leader, and I had also an incredible team. And in terms of our achievements, I would say we did many things, but one of the most published thing is that what we called the eco-efficiency tool. In easy words, it's actually a tool with 20 eco-friendly parameters that allow buildings to become greener and to build higher. It's I think the term is development rights tool. So they have the opportunity to build more stories in terms of accomplishing these 20 eco-friendly parameters. And it's kind of confusing maybe, but yeah, it's a tool that's been used in several countries in Latin America. Actually, Brazil was one of the first that used these development rights tools, but they never had this approach to eco-friendly buildings, building higher, and it's very interesting because we showed this in several places and countries, and it's been a success, I think.
Yeah, that sounds amazing. Congratulations on that. Moving to a little bit more broad of a question, why do you think city leadership is important in an ever more globalized world? You know, the world gets more globalized and connected every year. And why do you think specifically the SDGs, the Sustainable Development Goals, are important for cities to know, understand, and measure within their city?
Well, I would say that it's a very important question, actually. I think that city leadership is important because all the actions taken by cities and territories in planning issues are the main drivers of developing countries and the reasons why and how the countries are growing. This is relevant for urban areas as well as for rural areas. For example, things like urban sprawling, food security, risk management, the use of natural resources, all of those things are managed by cities. And the scale of city legislation can control and improve these aspects. Actually, these key factors allow the cities to control and to direct and guide how countries develop. And the scale of this, its legislation is what actually lands these problems in the territory. When you think about the governments, the scale they use as legislation and law and normative is too high, it's too big. So they don't have the chance to control and manage these things. And this has an impact on global and local and even national scale. The implementation of the HDs in cities is very important. But what is actually very important is that we can take actions in the very pragmatic way, because SDGs are still very general thing, are concepts. The way that you learn these things, that you apply these things in territory, have to become legislation and practical. Otherwise, it doesn't work at all. You cannot even measure the impact.
Yeah, I agree. And that actually leads me to a question, because you talk about how they have to be practical for a country or a city. So that leads me to reporting mechanisms for the SDGs. So Ecuador as a country has completed a voluntary national review this year, which was submitted maybe just 1 month ago to the UN High-Level Political Forum. I was curious if you're familiar with a voluntary local review, and if so, why do you think Quito hasn't conducted one yet?
Yeah, I'm a little familiar, and I have two answers to that. First one is a political aspect. Quito has almost a bit more than a year with the new municipality administration, and they have very little time to accomplish anything or to have the opportunity to measure something. Remember that they started in May 2019, and for May 2020 we were already in a lockdown. Things with the pandemic here in Ecuador are still quite tough, and you know, the social security system, is limited. So for May 2020 we were already in the lockdown, and that changed all the priorities of the municipality. So I think it has to be a little bit related with that. National level, on the other hand, we are already finishing this administration. Elections are coming next May, and it's good for this administration. Then the national administration have the opportunity to measure how much they accomplished related to the SDGs.
You are an architect by training, an urban planner at heart. How can urban planning enable the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goals?
Yeah, actually, that's true. I have a good friend who says that you're just an architect and you became a planner by heart. And I actually became in love with the city during my time through the municipality. You have the opportunity to learn about the city and how the municipality and the local government works. And that's very important, because it's very easy when you are outside and you criticize any action and you don't understand what was behind it. And for the applications of the achievements and the sustainable development goals, I would say that we have in Latin America like three main aspects, three main components that allows you to act in any topic of public policy. And maybe there are some more. You can extend these ones, but I would say there's three main important. First one, the political component, and that's very important, because we as developing countries, we need to learn how to choose better. It's very difficult. It's very difficult if you find singers and sportsmen in taking decisions for the cities and for the people. And also these people, this political person, they need to understand that they are there for public service. not for only personal and private interest. And that's very, very important because we as people, we have to oblige them to do what they have to do, serve their purpose. The second component is people's involvement. Nothing in the city will work if people is not involved in the decisions of the public, the public actions, because that makes that these decisions and that those actions become more sustainable in time, and people defend and respect them. We have a problem, for example, with urban infrastructure or urban furniture. It's very difficult to maintain, but when people respect these things and they protect and they defend these things, they last in time and they serve for its real purpose. And the last component I would say is we need to be realistic. And I always say this to people, and sometimes I get in trouble because of that. But someone needs to pay for our dreams. We as planners, when we are dreaming of a perfect city and trying to apply these SGDs that sounds very, very far from our reality, but someone needs to pay for this. So involvement of private sectors is very, very important to achieve this urban quality that we need. And for that, we need to know where we take these resources from, how do we spend them, how do you prioritize how do you spend this money. But it's very important that we, as social and private sector, we invest in our cities as well. So I would say that these are like the main components to achieve these SGDs in all the aspects. Because if you have a city that has some resources, and you can invest in social, in environmental, in any aspect you want, and you have as local government, the mayor and all the people around him prioritize correctly.
Well, thanks for talking about the importance of public-private partnerships, especially when it comes to infrastructure. And I agree, you know, urban planners have amazing dreams and solutions. We just need those to be put into reality more often. So
definitely. And actually, one thing that's very important is we as developing countries, we need to develop our own solutions, because we always tend to bring things and try to use things or solutions or tools that been applied in some other countries in Europe or North America, but not always applied to our reality. And that's very important, because that money need to come from a solution more creative and apply to our actual reality. And that's very, very important. However, we cannot forget that to achieve those dreams, as I told you, someone needs to pay for our dreams. And that's very, very important. And some other thing that's very important to say is that part of these people who has to pay for our dreams, it's the citizens. Taxes are needed, and they have to be just and correctly applied, but we need to pay taxes. We need to pay the urban services. In Latin America, we have very cheap water, very cheap electricity, very cheap transportation, public transportation. And I understand why, because I understand that serves to a social purpose as well. But people who has more resources need to pay a little bit more, and that's true.
Yes, we would say we want that to be true everywhere. It's very exciting that a few years ago, Quito hosted Habitat 3. That was in October of 2016. And at that time, that was 1 year after the Sustainable Development Goals had been finalized, they had been negotiated, and then it was also less than 1 year after the clock started ticking on Agenda 2030. I'm curious if you attended, and if so, what did you personally learn, and what were the main takeaways of the conference?
Yeah, yes, actually, I had the opportunity to attend. It was amazing. Actually, for the city, was was a great platform. And maybe if you think about it, the municipality of Mauricio Rodas was very committed to environmental stuff. But I think it was so big in such a short period of time that you had really lots of things to do and to learn. But if I had to sum up some of the main learnings, I would say it was an opportunity to learn from others and to dream about how we can achieve a better future for our cities. We had people from Europe, people from America in general, from Latin America, and that was very important because we saw that our dreams are possible and a better city is possible. But we still have some way to go. But first thing is start. You have to take action and start in a point, and then things roll in the same direction. But I think the SDGs are also the way to change the perspective of the way that we saw planning before. It's a guideline for public policy and almost an obligation for the cities already. So that's I think that's the main thing we could learn from the H3. Yeah.
That's exciting. It sounds like it was a great event and learning opportunity. And kind of building off of that, I'm curious from your perspective, what do you think the level of familiarity with the Sustainable Development Goals, either broadly as a concept or some of the goals specifically in Quito, are both within the government, I guess the new administration, and then among the general populations, the citizens of Quito?
Yeah, I think or after the Habitat 3, I think the the SDGs came very deep in the public administration. So let's say that's the alibi for any action are the SDGs, and that's good in a way. Problem is that it's becoming just an alibi and not taking serious concrete actions, but it's good. As I told you, this administration has the obligation to update the developing the PDOT, which is the territorial plan development plan of the city, and I think they are very keen on applying as much as possible of the SDGs in this plan, and which later will become legislation, practical legislation, and that's very good. So the knowledge about that in the public administration is very deep, I think. On the other hand, the general population, they know nothing. It's just a ghost for the general population. I think it became like public knowledge a little bit, but they don't get deep into it. So it's like more a common sense stuff. We in Latin America, we still have a very long way to go in terms of social equality, for example, not only in race terms, but in gender and in social scales, if you can say. Environmental is also a problem that we are not really aware of it. We have very cheap resources in Ecuador, and so water is not a problem. You can spend as much water as you want, and you don't care about it. I think it's not only because it's cheap, but also because we don't take consciousness of how important it is. And yeah, but I think it's growing. It's growing as last President Correa. It's been criticized a lot, but I think they did something very important. That's investing in education. So you have plenty of people coming from their studies in Europe and the States, and they come with a new mentality. They see things different, and that's something very important, I think.
Well, I appreciate your honesty, perhaps about the lack of knowledge among the citizens. And you're not the only one. In the United States, also, hardly anyone knows what the SDGs are. I think the only people who are aware of it are people, not even, I'll say, our government knows that much about it. But if you're maybe a student of international relations, or you work for the UN, and that's pretty much it. So I'll say it here. I think it's a great opportunity for our countries and our cities to work together and create educational outreach, because I'll get to this later, but young people are an increasing part of all of our populations, and nothing really can be accomplished without bringing young people along, and they're always very eager to learn and drive social movements forward. So I'm excited for that possibility. Yeah. I want to move on.
If you think about it, it has to do a little bit with the reality of the social the society. In Latin America, it's sad to say, but I would say that people need to think how they are going to get to work, because transportation is difficult and sometimes expensive. They have to think how they are going to feed their children, or sometimes they don't have any job to do. So thinking about SDGs is the last thing they have in their priorities. And in schools are worried about teaching math and grammar, but not about environmental or resources or cities or anything related to this. And so I think it's important that education changes a little bit. The priorities of education changes, but also is a matter of how societies are composed in terms of economic growth and the possibility to reach some level of education and stuff like that. And it happens in every city and everywhere in every part of the world. Europe has a different approach to education, and I think their story has forced them to think about those things. But in America, we still have a way to go about it. Yeah, the States have the reality, Canada as well, and Mexico is different as well. And let's say Ecuador and other countries we have these problems. And we don't realize that quality of life and quality of cities are important to allow this.
I completely agree. You mentioned a few times about Quito's last mayor, Mauricio Rodas, who was heavily involved in sustainability. He was co-president of UCLG, board member of the Global Covenant of Mayors, C40 Cities, ICLEI, I could go on. And I've heard him speak about Quito's first metro line, and that the inspiration for that was the fact that 56% of CO2 emissions in Quito were coming from the previous mobility system. And he's also highlighted far and wide about waste management. So I'm curious to hear from you how the metro line is progressing and how you think it's contributing to sustainability in Quito. And then if you have any comments on waste management in Quito.
The 56% of the CO2 footprint in the city was caused by public transport, by transportation in general. A great deal of it is due to gasoline. So what it means is private individual vehicles, which is the reality in Ecuador. You see, Quito is a very long city, and we have two valleys that are growing very, very fast. And transportation was not perfect in a way. I think still that Quito's transportation it's very good, because you can get anywhere in public transportation, and it's working not terrible. But we needed something to structure this, not only in terms of transportation, but also in terms of urban development. So the first line of Metro de Quito comes, and we use it actually as a spine in the city. So it goes all along the city. It has 13 stations. The stations are placed in what we call the urban centralities of the city. So the objective is actually that they are going to densify the city in these areas and use the urban services as much as possible, using it as the transportation as a main let's say parameter of planning. We are using the DOT considerations for urban development, which is let's say the driver of how the planning in Quito is working. And we have great expectations of how it's going to work. We don't really, I think that's not completely, we haven't think about it integrally yet, because you have to change lots of things and think in a lot of things that are going to happen when metro starts. But we have great expectations. I think it's running for next year. We're finishing the construction, and it's going very, very well. And one of those things is that we have to integrate all the transportation systems to the metro, and that I think they are working in that now. The BRTs and alternative mobility is not yet completely integrated, but I think we are going in the right direction in that sense.
That sounds great.
Yeah.
Do you have any insight about waste management in Quito?
Yes. Well, that's a big problem, to be honest. During the past administration, we tried to initiate some initiatives about how to treat and manage waste. It's not easy. It's very, very expensive. Not only solid waste management, but water as well. And with the metro line, the resources of the city were very compromised. So you can do just one thing at a time. You cannot attack everything in a city like ours. We initiated a waste plant treatment for creating natural gas, but it was just at the beginning. We have this problem. We don't have as much place to put our waste. The studies show that we produce pretty much 2,500 tons of waste daily, which is very difficult to manage. So yeah, we initiate some initiatives, but time is a bit short. Even 4 years are short to try and change those things. But yeah, it's a problem in I think it's in general in Latin America.
Yeah, you're definitely right. 4 years might seem like a lot. 4 years you go to high school, 4 years you go to college, but I think you mentioned previously, like it takes 1 full year for a new administration to come in, settle, understand what's going on. And then as you mentioned, so the new administration came in, and now 1 year after they came, COVID lockdown happened. So that kind of put the brakes on anything that they could move forward. But I want to return specifically to the Sustainable Development Goals again. If you look broadly at action toward achieving the SDGs, it's disproportionately been taken by developed countries or the global north, some would say, which is not a strike against these cities and countries at all, but development is in the title of the Sustainable Development Goals. So why do you think we've not heard more about them from developing countries and cities in developing countries on Agenda 2030?
Yeah, well, always resources are a problem. Yes, definitely. Which in some cities they spend a lot of money trying to achieve these goals, but they need a lot of investment. However, I think if I should take or talk about Latin America and specifically about Quito, I think we discussed this previously, is that we have to take solutions that are fitted to our reality and not trying to fit solutions from other countries with other realities in ours, first of all. And we have to think first, no matter how important other things are, but social issues in our countries are very, very difficult. Poverty, the lack of education, the cost of land, which force people to live very, very far from their work. Those things, those issues have to be tackled first with the right policy guidelines, which are the SDGs. Previously, we have a big history of governments and cities providing housing, for example, for the people. But this housing is always very far where land is very cheap. And we don't take actions in terms of helping these people to become more integrated and close to the city. So that creates a separation in social layers, and I think we have to work on those issues using these SDGs as guidelines of public policy, but the objective is not accomplishing the SDGs, is solving our problems using these right guidelines and not what we used to use before. So it's a little bit of that. Yeah, always resources are going to be a problem. And on the other hand, the building a very stable and solid legislation framework is very, very important. The one that we have now as Latin America, not always strong enough, and that's very important, because good intentions are always easy, but translating those good intentions in the right public policy and legal framework, it's the only way to apply pragmatically and actually use these lines as actions in the city. So yeah, for me, it's those things. First, it's we have to be creative in our reality and use the SDGs as a way to accomplish things that solve our problems, and on the other hand, solid framework, legal framework.
Yes, I love your perspective as an urban planner, because you obviously think spatially, talking about distance between housing and work. And that brings me to another question, because I do love cities. I live in one. But sometimes and oftentimes they get a bad reputation because cities account for only 2% of total land in the world, but almost 60% of all people live in cities today. And cities consume 60% of global energy. They produce 70% of global greenhouse gas emissions and 70% of global waste. So how do you think cities can do better for the future of our world, especially when it comes to climate action? How can cities reduce emissions and waste, which we already discussed a little bit?
I would say first, and related to the last question, is a solid legal framework. Sometimes, and very often, the legal framework you need to change the problems in environmental impacts that city receives from industry, for example, will certainly affect some industry. This solid framework, legal framework, to make those things change. Industries are, in some cases, well-intended, but you need the city to equalize, to level the battlefield between what they need and what they want to achieve as their economic and financial goals, and what the city needs. One example of that is, for example, the use of individual vehicles, private individual vehicles. We all know that if you allow all the people in the city to have their own car, they will do it. So we have to restrict this, and you have to orient the public policies to public transportation for everyone. Yeah, we need quality of transportation as well, but as I always say to my people I know in Ecuador, I spent 3 years in London during my studies, and I mean, when you take the bus, you go in a bus full of people. Yeah, it's true. It's a very it's nice, it's beautiful, it's clean. Well, yeah, okay, I can give you that, but it's also expensive compared with to our reality. Transportation in London is very expensive. And I used to take the bus because I was a student and I couldn't afford to take the metro sometimes. So yeah, it's true. Those are the realities. But it's even expensive. It's more expensive to have a car because you have some restrictions that are meant to help the city to be a better place for everyone, and that becomes with a very solid legal framework. The other things I was thinking about is education and social involvement. That's vital. We have we've seen in studies and practical actions of public policy in the world that when you involve people in the public decisions, they understand first of all, and they defend the actions, and that's very very important. Otherwise, even if it's good for them, they don't understand why the government is doing what it's doing, and they criticize, they go against it because actually they don't understand the advantages of these actions. So education and social involvement is vital. And lastly, I would say that the involvement of private sector. This relationship between public and private is vital. There is no amount of money that the local government can have that's gonna solve all the problems. It's impossible. It would never happen. Cities are very expensive, and that's true. So you need necessarily to have this relationship, but this relationship have to be open, clear, because it's always been this kind of relationship, but always shady and below the table, and it doesn't work like that. I think even general populations, general public will understand and value these actions and this involvement, but it has to be clear, open, and legal. And we have the tools to do that. We have the mechanisms, and that's very important.
Yes, transparency. So I agree about transparency, and I wanted to ask. So overall, 25% of Ecuador's population is indigenous, as in they were there before European colonization. So how is Quito, if they are seeking out indigenous knowledge, specifically around sustainability, and how do you think the city can do better in including these perspectives?
Yeah, well, 25% is a lot. I wouldn't say that's not that much. I think indigenous populations are mostly concentrated in some other provinces. Quito is, as the capital, is not necessarily as much as that. And but I agree that we have to think in these. What I told you is social equality is the way to go in Latin America, and Ecuador I think is the same. And we have to take it seriously. We have, as a country, as a city, a serious debt about it. And not only indigenous communities, but we have to think in gender. We have to think in different incomes, trying to shorten this bridge, and that's very important. We have some initiatives of trying to use this. I forgot the name. Is nature-inspired solutions, urban solutions, and it involves not only the environmental aspect of it, but also the social aspect of it. So it's trying to make people understand that the solutions based on nature and passive ways of solving things in the city are important. For example, during this lockdown, we saw that urban farming became important. So people is trying to it's applying this idea of growing their own food, and indigenous people in that matter have a lot of experience, for example, because they are mainly in the rural areas growing our food. So those are some aspects that we are trying to, as a city, as a society, trying to incorporate in our daily lives. And I don't know if as planning tools we have as much as we should about that, but I think as social and consciousness, we learn and we are trying to get more into that. Yeah. Well,
Thank
I
you.
think it's a problem in America in general. Sorry, look what's happening in the U.S. right now. I mean, all the movements about Black Lives Matter let you see that's a problem that still we have as societies a long way to go. It's becoming evident because of these problems, but it's everywhere. It's everywhere,
Yes.
and I think we have to work on that.
Yes, we need more inclusive societies. Yet another aspect of inclusion on social issues is age. And as a young person myself, I've read that in South America, the number of youth as a percentage of the overall population is skyrocketing. So two last questions specifically on youth. How can cities in South America better engage young people as partners in achieving the SDGs, but also, as you said, other social initiatives within the city, not just specifically the SDGs?
I would say that as city, as a planner and a former municipality director, besides all that we've talked already, education, involvement, and everything, I would say that one of the easiest and most important ways to involve youth in the planning and developing of the cities is creating opportunities and spaces and quality of spaces that allows these people to learn and to find new alternatives of living the city. Alternative mobility, for example. I am sure that people would be able and would like to move in a bike, for example, using a bike, or but if they don't have where to go, they don't have the right infrastructure, they don't understand the advantages of it, and that's a social action in public action that ignites something, and that's very, very important. And that's an example that creates a different mindset in the way that public policy is driven. And that allows these young people to be creative with other things. That could even develop entrepreneurship related to these kind of new aspects of the city. And that's an opportunity that city gives you as a public action, as a public infrastructure. Urban farming, for example, as well. I mean, I'm sure that urban farming is not going to feed the whole city. It's impossible. That's just dreaming. However, it helps. It helps not only because it gives you some food, but allows elder people, for example, to have something to do at home and with their families. They feel useful, and it changes the mindset of these people. So these little actions, they are not going to solve big problems, but help to create a new environment, a new atmosphere of a new city with more quality. So yeah, in one hand, and on the other hand, I think we have to stop complaining. We need to take action. We need to solve problems. I mean, it's very easy as a citizen to say the government or the municipality, they don't give me these, they don't have, yeah, we don't have as much money to give you the perfect city. But if we don't take action, seriously action, pragmatically, it's just complaining. It doesn't work. So creating these opportunities to people for young people to talk, to participate, it's I think it's the most important thing. But young people have to change their minds as well.
I agree. We could definitely improve on being more solutions oriented. So as my final question, what is your message directly to young people on how they can take action on urban sustainability?
Yeah, well, open your eyes. People is out there, solutions are out there, but you have to question yourself, question the way you live, question the actions of the government as well. Yeah, raise your voice, but don't fall in the easy way of living your life in the city. Question yourselves. That's very important. Once you think of why things are working that the way they're working, and you are able to propose a solution, things start to move differently, and that's very important.
Thank you so much. I learned a lot from you, and I think we could talk all day. I was laughing earlier because you talked about urban farming, perhaps for the older population. My grandpa would love to do that, as a retired person. He's always looking for leisure activities, and I think people of all ages are always seeking fulfillment and how they can contribute to improving their community. So I think that's a great idea. So, city leaders out there, I hope you're listening to that suggestion.
It's true, and actually, sometimes we think that we need a big space, a garden or a courtyard. No, you need a very little space to start, and you need to talk with your neighbors and get together and try to find a solution for something. And elder people is it's in Latin America, the percentage of elder people in our society is little. It's not that much as let's say other countries like Europe, for example. However, they need activities and they can propose solutions. We need to give them the opportunity. That's it, and we need as much as the little jar to start with some tomatoes, and that's it. That
Definitely,
changes the mindset.
because they have a whole lifetime of experience and knowledge to share, and they are looking for activities that benefit the community.